You should be ashamed to wear that dress in this house." I heard the words before I even stepped through the doorway, and for one strange second, I wondered if the woman was talking about me. Then every conversation in the Blackwood mansion stopped. My fingers tightened around the strap of my old handbag. The dress was navy blue, simple, and probably at least 5 years out of fashion. It was also the nicest thing I owned. I had pressed it twice that afternoon, careful around the loose seam near my waist, because tonight was supposed to be important. Not for me. For the Blackwoods. I was only Emily Carter, their live-in maid, 27 years old, 5 feet 4, soft around the middle, and painfully aware that my body took up more space than the women who usually walked through those marble halls. I had spent the entire evening moving quietly between silver trays, crystal glasses, and conversations that were never meant for someone like me. Then Mrs. Blackwood had decided to make my dress the evening's entertainment. I looked down at myself. "It's clean," I said softly. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted. She smiled. "That isn't what I meant." I knew exactly what she meant. My cheeks burned, but I refused to touch them. I had learned a long time ago that embarrassment became more powerful when you try to hide it. Around us, women in elegant gowns lowered their eyes. Men in tailored suits suddenly found their drinks fascinating. Nobody wanted to become involved. Nobody except the man standing near the fireplace. Adrian Blackwood. His presence had always changed a room before he ever spoke. He was 34, white, broad-shouldered, and covered in intricate tattoos from his neck all the way down his legs, though tonight most of the ink disappeared beneath an immaculate black suit. A narrow pattern showed above his collar. More appeared at his wrists whenever his sleeves shifted. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't drinking. He was watching me. That was worse. I had worked in his mansion for 8 months. I knew his habits. Adrian rarely repeated himself. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. People simply listened when he spoke. I expected him to. Tell me to leave the room. Instead, he said, "Emily, stay." My heart gave one hard beat. Mrs. Blackwood turned toward him. "Adrian, this is a family event." "I know." His eyes remained on me. "That's why she's staying." I didn't know what surprised me more, the fact that he had defended me, or the fact that he had used my first name in front of everyone. I straightened my shoulders. "I can go back to the kitchen." "You don't have to." "I know." His expression changed almost imperceptibly. Maybe he hadn't expected that answer. I walked toward the long dining table and placed the empty tray down. My hands were steady now. That mattered. I had spent years being underestimated. People saw a plus-size woman in a maid's uniform and decided they already knew everything about her. They saw softness and assumed weakness. They saw a modest dress and assumed poverty of character. They saw a quiet woman and assumed she had nothing worth saying. They were wrong. Adrian seemed to realize that before anyone else did. His gaze moved briefly to the old seam near my waist, then returned to my face. I braced myself for another judgment. Instead, he asked, "Who told you to wear that?" I blinked. "No one. I chose it." "Why?" The question almost made me laugh. "Because I liked it." Silence. Then Mrs. Blackwood scoffed. "Adrian, surely you aren't taking this seriously." He finally looked away from me. His face became unreadable. "Actually, Mother, I am." My breath caught. Not because he had defended my dress. Because for the first time since I had entered this mansion, the most powerful man in the room wasn't looking at me like I belonged beneath him. He was looking at me like he had just discovered he had completely misjudged me. The room stayed quiet for several seconds after Adrian spoke. I could hear the soft ticking of the grandfather clock near the staircase, each second somehow louder than the last. I should have thanked him. I should have lowered my eyes and returned to the kitchen. That was what a maid was supposed to do in a house like this. Instead, I stood beside the dining table with my hands resting against the edge of the tray and wondered why Adrian Blackwood suddenly cared about a dress he had probably never noticed before tonight. Mrs. Blackwood recovered first. "You are making this unnecessarily uncomfortable," she said. Adrian looked at her. She was not the one who made it uncomfortable. That ended the conversation. At least for the moment. I could feel everyone's attention shifting between us, and I hated it. I was comfortable being invisible. Invisible was safe. Invisible meant I could do my work, collect my paycheck, and go home without becoming part of a family whose name appeared in newspapers and whose private gatherings seemed to carry rules I had never been taught. I picked up the tray again. "I have coffee to serve." Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. "You can leave it." It will get cold. Then let it. I almost smiled. That sounds wasteful. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps. I walked toward the kitchen before he could say anything else. Behind me, I heard someone whisper my name. I kept walking. The kitchen was warmer than the dining room, filled with the familiar scent of roasted vegetables, fresh bread, and coffee. I set the tray down and leaned against the counter for one breath. Just one. My heart was still beating too quickly. Adrian Blackwood had defended me in front of his family. That should have felt flattering. Instead, it made me nervous. Men like Adrian did not do things without a reason. I had learned that during my 8 months working in his house. Every favor had a purpose. Every question had a destination. Every silence meant something. I reached for a clean cup when the kitchen door opened. Adrian walked in alone. I nearly dropped the spoon. You scared me. You were thinking too loudly. I stared at him. That does not make any sense. It does to me. He moved toward the counter, and under the warm kitchen lights, I could see more of the ink that disappeared beneath his collar. The tattoos made him look even more intimidating, but I had noticed something else over the months. Adrian never touched anything carelessly. He placed a glass down as though it mattered. He folded a napkin instead of tossing it aside. Even his silence seemed deliberate. Why are you here? I asked. I wanted to ask you something. About my dress? About tonight. I waited. He looked toward the doorway, making certain we were alone. You knew my mother was going to say something. I frowned. No, I did not. You looked prepared. I let out a quiet breath. I work here, Adrian. I know when people are unhappy with me. He studied my face. You did not seem embarrassed. I was. His expression softened by the smallest degree. You hit it well. I looked down at my hands. That is different from not feeling it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Adrian asked, why did you come tonight? Because I was told to. That is not what I mean. I looked back at him. Then I do not understand the question. He stepped closer to the counter, but stopped several feet away. Everyone here has a reason for being in that room. Money, influence, family. What is yours? I almost laughed. My reason? I work here. That is your job. I asked about you. The question landed differently. Nobody in this house asked about me. They asked whether the silver had been polished, whether dinner was ready, whether the flowers needed changing. They asked what I could do for them. Adrian was asking who I was when I was not doing something for them. I folded my hands together. I am trying to build a better life. His eyes stayed on mine. For yourself? I hesitated. Not only for myself. Before he could ask more, voices sounded from the hallway. Adrian glanced toward the door. I reached for the tray. You should go. He did not move. Emily. I paused. Tomorrow morning, cancel your usual schedule. My eyebrows lifted. Why? His answer was quiet. Because I want you in my office at 9. 9 o'clock, Adrian said. Do not make me come looking for you. I almost told him that sounded less like an invitation and more like an order, but he had already turned toward the kitchen door. I watched him disappear into the hallway, the black suit, the quiet footsteps, the glimpse of tattoos beneath his collar fading with every step. Then I looked at the clock. 8:23. I had 37 minutes to wonder what I had done wrong. I barely slept that night. At 8:58 the next morning, I stood outside Adrian's office with my hands folded around a small notebook. The mansion was quieter now. The guests had left. The crystal glasses were gone. The music had stopped. Everything looked normal again, which somehow made last night's humiliation feel like something I had imagined. I knocked once. Come in. Adrian stood behind his desk. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows behind him, catching the edges of the ink along his neck. Without the jacket, more of his tattoos showed across his arms, intricate black patterns disappearing beneath the sleeves of his shirt. He looked less like the man who had defended me at dinner and more like the person everyone in this city seemed careful around. I stepped inside. You asked for me. Sit. I sat in the chair across from him. He remained standing. I reviewed your employment file. My stomach tightened. Did I do something wrong? No, that answer came immediately. Then why are we discussing it? Adrian opened a folder. You have been working here for 8 months. Yes. You have never requested a raise. I blinked. I received my agreed salary. That was not my question. I looked at him carefully. I do not ask for money I have not earned. Adrian's expression shifted. You clean half this house, and I am paid for it. You work 12-hour days when we have events. Because there are events. You cover shifts for other employees. Because sometimes people have emergencies. He closed the folder. You always have an answer. You keep asking questions. For 1 second, silence filled the office. Then, unexpectedly, Adrian smiled. It was brief. Barely there. But I saw it. You are different in here, he said. Different from what? From the person who walks through this house, carrying a tray. I looked at the expensive rug beneath my shoes. Maybe because nobody expects me to be invisible in here. That wiped the smile from his face. He came around the desk and stopped near the window. Who told you that you were invisible? No one had to. My voice softened. You learn it. Adrian turned. Explain. I took a breath. When you work for wealthy people, you learn quickly which parts of yourself are welcome. Be polite. Be quiet. Do not interrupt. Do not sit unless someone tells you to. Do not speak too much. Do not make people uncomfortable. His eyes stayed on mine. And last night I forgot. Forgot what? That I was supposed to disappear. Adrian said nothing. I felt strangely brave sitting there. Maybe because his office was the first room in that mansion where I did not feel like I had to apologize for existing. Then he asked the question I had been avoiding. What are you trying to build? I looked at him. A life where I do not have to choose between helping my family and having something for myself. Something changed in his face. Your family? I nodded. My mother lives in Ohio. My younger brother is finishing school. I send money when I can. And yourself? I manage. That is not an answer. I gave him a small smile. It is the only one I have. Adrian walked back to his desk and picked up a second folder. He placed it in front of me. I stared at it. What is that? Something you should have been given months ago. I opened it. My breath stopped. It was a proposal for a new position inside the Blackwood organization. Better pay. Better hours. A private office. Benefits. My name was printed at the top. I slowly closed the folder. No, Adrian's eyebrows rose. You did not even read the details. I read enough. Why? I stood and pushed the folder back toward him. Because I do not want you giving me something because you feel sorry for me. Adrian looked at the folder, then at me. His voice became very quiet. Emily, I have never felt sorry for you. I have never felt sorry for you. Adrian's words stayed between us, heavier than they should have been. I looked at him across the enormous desk, trying to decide whether I believed him. Then why offer me this? I asked. Adrian glanced at the folder. Because you earned it. By cleaning your house. By doing more than cleaning my house. He opened the folder again and turned it toward me. You organize staff schedules when no one asks. You remember which employees have children. You cover shifts without making a spectacle of it. You notice when something is wrong before anyone else does. I stared at the pages. The salary was almost double what I made now. My first instinct was to close the folder. My second was to wonder what the catch was. What exactly would I be doing? Managing household operations across my properties. I looked up. That sounds like a very complicated way of saying maid. Adrian's jaw tightened. It is not the same position. It is still inside your world. Yes. Then why me? His answer came without hesitation. Because you understand people. I almost laughed. You hired me to clean marble floors. And somehow you know when my head chef is about to quit, when my housekeeper is worried about her daughter, and when my security manager has not slept properly in 3 days. I stared at him. You noticed all that? I notice everything. The statement should have sounded intimidating. Instead, I found myself wondering how much he had noticed about me. Adrian tapped the folder once. You also noticed my mother was trying to embarrass you last night before I did. That was not difficult. Most people would have ignored it. Most people were afraid of making her angry. Were you? I met his eyes. I was afraid of being humiliated. Adrian became completely still. There is a difference. I swallowed. Yes. He leaned against the edge of his desk. What would make you accept the position? I frowned. You are still asking? You rejected it. I did. Then I am asking what would change your mind. I looked down at the folder. For years, I had imagined what it would feel like to have enough money that every unexpected expense did not become a crisis. But money had never been the only problem. It was what came with it. The assumptions. The looks. The quiet expectation that gratitude should replace dignity. I want the position based on my work, I finally said. Not because you want to prove something to your family. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. What do you think I am trying to prove? I do not know. Then do not decide for me. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it. I closed the folder. Fair enough. I started toward the door. Emily. I stopped. Take the folder home. Why? Read everything when you are not standing in front of me. I turned around. And if I still say no? Adrian looked directly at me. Then I will accept your answer. That surprised me more than the offer itself. I opened the door. Before I could step out, he added, but you should know something. I looked back. What? You have been working beneath your ability for a very long time. My fingers tightened around the folder. Nobody had ever said that to me. Not my teachers. Not my old employers. Not even my family. They had all praised me for surviving. Adrian was the first person who seemed to expect me to become something more. I walked down the hallway with the folder pressed against my chest. I should have been thinking about the salary. Instead, I kept thinking about one sentence. You have been working beneath your ability. By noon, I was back in the kitchen, wearing my usual uniform, trying to concentrate on lunch preparations. Then I heard footsteps. Adrian entered carrying a cup of coffee. He placed it beside me. You forgot breakfast. I stared at the cup. How do you know? You always make coffee at 8:15. You did not this morning. I slowly looked up. He had noticed that? Adrian turned toward the doorway. Then he stopped. One more thing. What now? He looked at me with that same unreadable expression. My family is having another meeting tonight. My stomach tightened. Why are you telling me? His answer was simple. Because this time, I want you in the room. This time, I want you in the room. Adrian's words followed me through the rest of the afternoon. I kept hearing them while I folded towels, while I polished the silverware, while I stood in the pantry pretending to organize shelves that were already perfectly organized. I had spent 8 months learning how to move through the Blackwood mansion without being noticed. Now Adrian wanted me sitting at his family's table. I did not know whether that was an opportunity or a terrible idea. At 6:45, I changed out of my work uniform. I chose the same navy dress from the night before. I almost changed my mind when I saw the loose seam near my waist, but then I remembered Mrs. Blackwood's voice. You should be ashamed to wear that dress in this house. I smoothed the fabric and looked at myself in the mirror. No, I whispered. I am not. At 7, I walked toward the family dining room. The double doors were already open. Adrian stood beside the long table, speaking with 2 men I had never seen before. His black suit was immaculate, and the tattoos along his neck disappeared beneath his collar. When he noticed me, his conversation stopped. His eyes moved briefly over my dress, then returned to my face. You came. I raised an eyebrow. You invited me. One corner of his mouth moved. Good. I stepped inside. Mrs. Blackwood was seated near the head of the table. Her expression changed immediately. She is joining us? Adrian pulled out a chair. Yes. I looked at the chair, then at him. You want me to sit there? That is generally what chairs are for. I almost smiled. You are remarkably funny when you are not trying to intimidate people. One of the men at the table looked down to hide his reaction. Adrian simply held my gaze. Sit, Emily. I did. The meeting began with numbers, property reports, staffing changes, and several discussions I only partly understood. I listened quietly. Then a document was placed in front of Adrian. He scanned it. Why did the operating costs increase by 18%? He asked. One of the executives answered immediately. Temporary staffing adjustments. I looked at the page. Something bothered me. I read the figures again. 18% was too high for temporary staffing. I hesitated. This was not my meeting. I was not supposed to speak. Then Adrian glanced toward me. You have been staring at that page for 30 seconds. Every face turned. My throat tightened. I noticed something. Mrs. Blackwood sighed. Emily, perhaps this is not the appropriate place. Adrian did not look at her. What did you notice? I pointed to the report. The increase is not evenly distributed. One of the executives frowned. Excuse me. The staffing cost is only higher at 3 properties. The other locations are almost unchanged. Adrian leaned forward. Continue. I took a breath. If this were a general staffing issue, the increase should appear across all locations. It does not. The room went quiet. I turned the page. Also, these 3 properties changed vendors within the same month. Adrian looked at the executive. Why? The man hesitated. Administrative reasons. I felt the atmosphere change. Not dramatically. Just enough. A pause. A glance. A hand resting too still against the table. Adrian noticed it too. He reached for the report. Who approved the vendor changes? The answer came slowly. Your cousin, Daniel. Adrian's expression became unreadable. Daniel was not in the room. Mrs. Blackwood immediately spoke. I am sure there is an explanation. I looked down at the report. There probably is. Adrian turned toward me. What? I pointed to a small line near the bottom of the page. The new vendor is charging more for fewer services. Adrian studied the numbers. Then he looked at me again. How did you catch that? I shrugged. I order household supplies. You learn what things cost. Nobody laughed. Adrian did not either. He simply closed the folder. Get me every vendor contract from those 3 properties. One of the executives started to object. Adrian raised one hand. The room went silent. I sat there, suddenly aware that I had crossed a line I could not uncross. The meeting continued for another 20 minutes. Then Adrian stood. Everyone out. Chairs moved. Papers were gathered. Mrs. Blackwood remained seated. Adrian, this is unnecessary. Mother. One word. She stopped. Soon, only Adrian and I remained. I looked at the folder between us. I am sorry. For what? For speaking. He stared at me. Never apologize for noticing something important. I swallowed. I am not a business executive. Not yet. My eyes lifted. What does that mean? Adrian opened the report again and tapped the figures I had found. It means tomorrow morning, you are coming with me. Where? His gaze held mine. To the Blackwood headquarters. You are coming with me. Adrian said it as if the decision had already been made. I stared at him across the dining room table, still trying to understand how I had gone from polishing silverware to examining corporate expenses in less than 24 hours. To headquarters? I asked. Yes. Why? Adrian closed the folder. Because you noticed something 3 executives missed. That does not mean I belong there. Maybe it means they should have been paying attention. I had no answer for that. The next morning, I arrived at Blackwood headquarters at 8:45, wearing my navy dress, a plain gray cardigan, and the only pair of comfortable black flats I owned. The building stood 42 stories above downtown, all glass and steel, with a lobby so polished I could see my reflection in the floor. I felt suddenly aware of everything. My dress, my size, my handbag. The fact that I had entered this building through the same side door used by cleaning staff for months, except today Adrian was waiting for me at the main entrance. He stood beneath the enormous black marble wall bearing the Blackwood name. His tattoos disappeared beneath a charcoal suit, except for a narrow line of ink visible above his collar. People noticed him immediately. Conversations softened. Employees straightened. Adrian did not seem to notice any of it. He looked at me. You are late. I checked my phone. It is 8:47. Exactly. I stared at him. You asked me to be here at 9. He paused. You are early. Yes. Then why are you arguing? Because you started it. For half a second, his expression almost softened. Come on. We took the private elevator to the 36th floor. I expected an office. Instead, Adrian led me into a conference room overlooking the city. 6 people were already waiting. 3 executives from the previous meeting, 2 attorneys, and Daniel Blackwood. I recognized him immediately from the reports. Adrian's cousin leaned back in his chair, looking at me with polite confusion. What is she doing here? Adrian took the seat at the head of the table. She found the vendor discrepancy. Daniel's expression changed. I sat beside Adrian, keeping my hands folded in my lap. I am right here. Adrian looked at me. Something about his expression told me not to shrink. So I did not. Daniel opened the folder. With respect, Adrian, she works in the household. She used to. My heart skipped. I turned toward Adrian. What does that mean? He did not look at me. You will find out. I disliked that answer immediately. The attorneys began reviewing the vendor agreements. The language was dense, filled with clauses and numbers that made my eyes ache. I listened. I took notes. Then I noticed something familiar. A phrase appeared in 3 contracts. Same wording, same service category, same billing structure. I raised my hand without thinking. Adrian looked at me. What? I pointed to the page. That company uses the same service description as the vendor from the mansion. One attorney looked at the document. That is common language. Maybe. I turned another page. But the invoice format is almost identical too. Daniel leaned forward. That does not prove anything. I did not say it proved anything. I looked at him. I said it was familiar. Adrian watched me for a long moment. Show me. I slid the documents across the table. He compared them. The room became quiet again. Then Daniel said, This is ridiculous. We are wasting time because a maid recognizes an invoice. I felt the old sensation return. That invisible line. That reminder of where everyone thought I belonged. I looked at Adrian. I expected him to answer for me. He did not. He simply waited. That was when I understood. He wanted to see whether I would answer for myself. I turned back to Daniel. You are right about one thing. I am not an accountant. I am not an attorney. I am not a corporate executive. But I know what people buy in this household because I have ordered it for 8 months. I know what legitimate invoices look like. I know which companies actually deliver what they charge for. And I know when numbers do not make sense. Daniel opened his mouth. I continued before he could interrupt. If you want to dismiss me because of my job title, that is your choice. But the numbers are still there. Silence. Adrian leaned back. I could feel his attention on me, but he said nothing. An hour later, the meeting ended without a conclusion. Adrian and I walked through the quiet hallway toward his office. I finally exhaled. You knew they would treat me like that. Yes. You could have warned me. You would have prepared a defense. Of course I would have. Exactly. I stopped walking. You used me as a test. Adrian turned around. For the first time, his expression looked genuinely serious. No. I gave you a room where your answer mattered. I did not know what to say. He stepped toward his office and opened the door. Tomorrow, you will have your own desk. My eyes widened. Tomorrow. If you want it. I looked at him carefully. And if I do not? Adrian held the door open. Then I will never ask again. I should have been relieved. Instead, I realized something had changed. The mansion had once been the place where I worked. The headquarters had been the place where people like me were expected to stay invisible. Now Adrian Blackwood was offering me a seat at the table. But I still had one question. Adrian. He stopped. Why are you doing this? His eyes met mine. Because I have spent years surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear. He paused. And you are the first person who tells me what I need to know. You do not get to decide what I am capable of. I said it before I could lose my nerve, and Adrian Blackwood went completely still. The words seemed to hang between us and the quiet hallway of the 36th floor. Behind him, sunlight stretched across the marble floor, bright against the dark lines of ink visible above his collar. I had spent years choosing my words carefully around powerful people. This time, I did not. Adrian looked at me for several seconds. I did not say I was deciding for you. You brought me here. Yes. You put me in that meeting. Yes. And now you are giving me a desk. His eyes narrowed slightly. You make that sound unreasonable. I am trying to understand you. He folded his arms. Then ask. I took a breath. Why are you suddenly treating me like I belong here? That question changed something. His expression lost its usual certainty. For a moment, he looked toward the windows instead of at me. The city stretched below us, 40 stories of glass, traffic, rooftops, and distant noise. Because you noticed what everyone else ignored, he said. That is not enough. It is for me. It should not be. I shook my head. There. That is exactly what I mean. Adrian looked back at me. What? You keep deciding what should be enough for me. Silence. Then he gave a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. You are difficult. I have been told. Frequently. Mostly by people who were not listening. His eyes stayed on mine. Something about that answer seemed to reach him. He lowered his arms. Fine. You want a reason? Here it is. I need someone in this company who is not afraid to tell me when something does not make sense. There are hundreds of employees here. And how many of them looked at that report and questioned it? I had no answer. Adrian stepped toward the conference room and opened the door. Come inside. I followed him. The room had emptied, but the documents remained spread across the long table. The same invoices. The same vendor agreements. The same numbers that had started this strange chain of events. Adrian placed one hand on the back of a chair. Tell me what you see. I looked at the papers again. This time, I did not feel like a maid pretending to understand business. I felt like someone being asked a serious question. I picked up the first invoice. The billing dates. Adrian waited. What about them? They are too consistent. That is usually a good thing. Not when 3 different properties supposedly received different services. I placed the papers side by side. Look at the delivery dates. They are all exactly 7 days apart. Adrian leaned closer. And the properties are in different states. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland. He looked at me. So the same company claims to have delivered identical equipment to all 3 locations within the same week, but the shipping records show only 2 deliveries. Adrian's expression changed. It was subtle, but I saw it. Curiosity. Where is the third? That is what I want to know. We spent the next hour comparing records. No shouting, no threats, no dramatic accusations. Just pages turning, keyboards clicking, and the quiet rhythm of two people trying to understand something that should have been simple. Then Adrian found it. A payment had been approved under a department that did not exist. He stared at the screen. That department has never been active. Then why is it receiving invoices? Exactly. I leaned back. You see it now. He looked at me. I saw it when you showed me. You were skeptical. I was cautious. That is a very rich man's word for skeptical. His mouth twitched. You really enjoy arguing with me. Only when you make it easy. For the first time, Adrian actually laughed. It was quiet and brief, but it changed his entire face. I had never heard that sound from him. It made the man everyone feared seem almost ordinary. Then the office door opened. Daniel stood there. His gaze moved from Adrian to me, then to the documents on the table. What are you doing? Adrian's expression hardened again. Working. Daniel stepped inside. On what? I closed the folder. Vendor discrepancies. His eyes settled on me. You are still involved in this. Something inside me tightened. There it was again. The old assumption. The uniform might be gone, but to him, I was still the maid from the mansion. Adrian looked at Daniel, then at me. I expected him to speak. Instead, he waited. So I did. Yes. Daniel gave a short, dismissive smile. You should stay in areas you understand. I looked down at the invoices. Then I looked back at him. I do understand this. You understand household purchasing, and you understand corporate finance. He nodded. Exactly. Then you should have noticed the missing department. Daniel's smile disappeared. Adrian did not move. Neither did I. The room went silent. Daniel looked at the papers again. What are you implying? I answered carefully. Nothing. Yet. Adrian's eyes shifted toward me. I could almost feel the question forming in his mind. What had I noticed now? I picked up the invoice with the missing department code. At the bottom was a signature. I knew that signature. I had seen it every week at the mansion. My stomach dropped. I looked at Adrian. I think I know who approved this. I think I know who approved this. Adrian did not answer. Immediately, his eyes moved from my face to the signature at the bottom of the invoice. Daniel was still standing near the door, and suddenly the room felt much smaller than it had a minute ago. Whose signature? Adrian asked. I turned the paper toward him. Marcus Reed. Daniel frowned. Who is Marcus Reed? I looked at Adrian. Your head of household operations. The silence that followed was different from all the others. This one carried recognition. Adrian's expression changed. You are certain? I have seen his signature dozens of times. I pointed to the page. He approves supply orders at the mansion, cleaning products, kitchen deliveries, maintenance invoices. I see them every week. Daniel crossed his arms. That does not prove he approved these. I know. I kept my voice calm. That is why I said I think. Adrian picked up the invoice and studied the signature. Marcus has never had authority over corporate vendor accounts. I looked at the missing department code. Then why is his signature here? Nobody answered. Adrian reached for his phone. Bring Marcus to my office. Daniel immediately said, there is no reason to involve him yet. Adrian looked at him. I did not ask whether there was a reason. Daniel stopped. I watched Adrian make the call. His voice remained quiet, almost ordinary. That was what made it difficult to read him. He did not need to sound angry to make people pay attention. When the call ended, he placed the phone on the table. He will be here in 20 minutes. I looked at the clock. What happens now? Adrian's eyes moved to me. Now we wait. I nodded and gathered the papers. Daniel watched me. You seem very comfortable with this. I paused. I am not. You certainly look like it. I turned toward him. I am trying not to make anyone else's discomfort my responsibility. Adrian looked at me then. I could not tell what he was thinking, but something in his expression softened. Daniel walked toward the door. I have other matters to handle. Adrian did not stop him. The door closed. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Adrian said, you should go home. I looked at him. Why? Because this is becoming complicated. You asked me to help. I did. Then I am staying. He leaned back against the desk. You understand that if Marcus is involved, this may affect people you know at the mansion. My fingers tightened around the folder. Are you asking me to leave because you are concerned about me, or because you are concerned about what I might find? Adrian's eyes sharpened. Those are not mutually exclusive. I almost smiled. That sounds like something a lawyer would say. I have lawyers. Of course you do. He gave me a look. You are impossible. You keep saying that. Because you keep proving it. The tension eased for one brief second. Then there was a knock. Marcus entered. He was in his early 50s, neatly dressed, familiar enough that I had spoken with him almost every week since I started working at the mansion. He looked surprised to see me. Emily. I stood. Hi, Marcus. His eyes moved to Adrian. You asked for me? Adrian gestured toward the chair. Sit. Marcus did. Adrian placed the invoice on the table. Do you recognize this? Marcus picked it up. His eyes moved across the page. Yes. My stomach tightened. Adrian noticed. Why? Marcus looked confused. Because I approved it. Daniel had said the signature did not prove anything. Marcus had just confirmed it. Adrian's voice remained calm. You approved a corporate vendor contract? Marcus hesitated. I was asked to review it. By whom? Marcus looked at me. Then Adrian. Daniel. The room went silent again. Adrian's fingers rested against the table. Did Daniel tell you why? Marcus shook his head. He said the paperwork needed to be processed quickly. I looked at the invoice. But this department does not exist. Marcus frowned. I was told it was temporary. Adrian looked toward me. I could see the same question in his eyes. How much had we missed? Marcus continued. I did not think anything of it. The paperwork looked legitimate. How many invoices? Adrian asked. Marcus swallowed. I do not know. Estimate. Marcus looked down. Maybe 12. Perhaps more. My heart sank. 12 invoices meant this was not a mistake. Adrian turned toward the window. For the first time since I had met him, I saw something close to uncertainty in his face. He had built an organization around people he trusted. Now one of those people had created a trail that led directly into his own company. I looked at the papers again. Then I noticed something else. Adrian. He turned. I pointed to the bottom of the invoice. There is a second approval. Marcus leaned forward. That is not mine. Adrian took the document. His eyes narrowed. I knew that look now. Whose is it? I asked. He did not answer. He turned the paper over, as if the back might somehow change what we had just seen. Then he looked at me. My mother. My mother. I repeated the words slowly, because somehow saying them aloud made the situation feel even less real. Adrian stood by the window with the invoice in his hand, his face unreadable. Marcus looked as though he wished he were anywhere else. I looked between them. Your mother approved this? Adrian did not answer immediately. Her signature is on it. That is not what I asked. His eyes came to mine. I know. The office suddenly felt colder. I had met Mrs. Blackwood only a few times before that night, but I knew enough to understand her position. She had influence. She had history with the company. More importantly, she was Adrian's mother. Maybe there is an explanation, I said. Adrian gave me a quiet look. You believe that? I believe people deserve a chance to explain themselves. Marcus nodded slowly. I agree. Adrian placed the invoice on the table. Then we will find out what happened. He asked Marcus to bring every related document to the office. When Marcus left, I remained beside the table, staring at the signature. You do not have to stay, Adrian said. I know. Emily. I looked at him. You are not responsible for this. I know that too. He frowned slightly. Then why are you still here? I glanced at the papers. Because I started noticing something. Adrian waited. I picked up the first invoice. Look at the approval dates. He stepped closer. What about them? They all happened before the vendor deliveries. That is normal. Not when the approvals are signed before the purchase orders are created. He took the second document. I placed it beside the first. And this one has the same pattern. Adrian's eyes moved between the pages. How did you notice that? Because I used to organize deliveries at the mansion. If the paperwork is out of order, someone eventually asks why the boxes arrived before the order was approved. He stared at the documents. Then he looked at me. You have been paying attention for 8 months. I told you. Someone has to. A faint expression crossed his face. Not amusement this time. Respect. He sat down and opened another file. We worked for nearly 2 hours. The city outside the windows changed from afternoon brightness to evening blue. The office lights reflected against the glass, turning the skyline into a field of scattered stars. I barely noticed the time. We found 11 invoices, then 12, then 14. Each one carried a similar pattern. Different properties, different amounts, similar approval timing. The money was not disappearing into one obvious place. It was being divided into smaller expenses, each one ordinary enough to escape attention. Adrian leaned back in his chair. Someone designed this to look insignificant. Yes. Why would they use your mother's signature? I looked at the page. Maybe they did not. He went still. What do you mean? Maybe she really approved some of these. And the others? Someone could have copied the signature. Adrian's expression hardened with concentration. That would mean someone had access to her documents. Or someone had access to a digital approval system. He reached for his phone. I will have the system audited. I touched the edge of the folder. Wait. He looked at me. What? Do not tell everyone yet. His eyebrows lifted. Why? Because if someone knows we found this, they can change the records. Silence. Adrian stared at me for several seconds. Then he slowly put his phone down. You are right. That sentence affected me more than it should have. Adrian Blackwood did not seem like a man who enjoyed being corrected, yet he had just accepted my advice without hesitation. I looked at the clock. It was almost 7:30. You should go home, he said. So should you. This is my company, and this is my evening. He looked at me. You have a strange definition of boundaries. You hired me. I have not officially hired you yet. I paused. Then perhaps you should decide quickly. His eyes held mine, and for a moment the tension in the room softened into something almost warm. Then the office door opened. Marcus returned carrying a thick stack of folders. I found something, he said. Adrian stood immediately. Marcus placed the folders on the table. There are records from the mansion too. My stomach tightened. What kind of records? Marcus looked at me. Payments approved under a household account. I stared at him. That account was used for staff expenses. I know. He opened the top folder. But some of the payments were not for staff. Adrian's gaze moved to the page. What were they for? Marcus hesitated. Then he answered, a private foundation. I frowned. Whose foundation? Marcus looked at Adrian. Then at me. Emily, I think you should see this. He turned the document around. My name was printed near the bottom.